Hey, good afternoon, class, or good morning, I should say. It's almost afternoon. It's 11:50 Friday morning, but I guess it doesn't really matter when you're watching this. It's probably going to be Sunday or maybe a little after. But either way, welcome back to week 3 of lifespan development. I can't believe I'm saying that because week 3 means we're already almost halfway through the course, if you can sort of believe that. But here we are, moving pretty quickly. Just wanted to give you a heads up if you don't already know, if you've been living under a rock, so to speak, the last week, which I don't think any of you have, but exam number 1 is due on Monday night. So please make sure you get that in. Exam number 1 covers chapters 1 through 4. I think a good chunk of the class has already taken it, but if you haven't yet, please do so, and I will, get those posted. Well, they'll actually post themselves. I'm sorry, they grade themselves, so I won't actually have to do a whole lot of posting, but make sure you get that in. Also, I think as of now, today's Friday, so I'll be posting your discussion grades tomorrow, so you'll probably see that. You'll probably see those posted by the time I have finished. So far, the second week of discussions have been great. Some of the peer responses have been a little shorter, maybe in terms of like getting the full 5 points. So if you don't get 15 points, check your peer responses first there and kind of see, maybe it's not as detailed, or maybe you're not asking questions, or maybe it needs to be expanded a little bit there. But that's mostly what I'm looking for. If you have specific questions, by all means ask. So exam number 1 should be your priority, taking care of that. Once you're done with that, go ahead and move on to our next readings for this week, which are chapter number 6 and chapter number 7, which of course means we're continuing to move through the developmental trajectory. This chapter 6 is actually really important because we're wrapping up infancy, but we're also covering the chapter on socio-emotional development, in infancy. And so we're going to start looking at the development of babies start showing emotions from like day 1. I mean, babies can, one of the biggest moments, one of the first big moments for parents is when a child smiles. They may not even be able to open their eyes yet, but if a baby smiles, that's a big deal for parents way before they ever say their first word or take their first steps. But that's a huge moment, and children can express those facially. They also express them, and obviously when they're crying and things like that. And you can even start to begin to see the early signs of personality development in children, especially things like temperament. That's going to be a big topic for this chapter, is reading about temperament, and that's something that kind of sticks with us for the rest of our life. And we're going to be looking at attachment theory again, which will be some review from introductory psych, but diving a little bit deeper into attachment theory and attachment styles. We'll also be looking at, different social contexts and how that plays into development as well. I mean, context matters. This whole idea of nature and nurture is important. Well, the social context is referring to the nurture side of things. Going to be looking at, this is also, I believe, our first deep dive into the theory of Erik Erikson, which will be really cool. So a lot of some of this course is built upon some of the bigger theoretical ideas from theorists like Piaget, Erik Erikson, Lev Vygotsky, among many others, but those are some of the big ones. So I believe you'll get a nice introduction to Erik Erikson and his 8 different stages of development, and that'll come up again and again and again. So this first stage of is so critically important. Where it's trust versus mistrust, is where children are learning basically, do I trust the people who are taking care of me, my caregivers, or if they're meeting my needs and providing love and things like that, or if they're not, maybe the infant or the child starts to learn to distrust, and that applies to future relationships down the road if you kind of follow that sort of Erikson Freudian perspective. So read chapter 6, and then we are going to move out of infancy and into our next stage, which is early childhood development. In this stage, we're going to be looking at both physical and cognitive development in one chapter. And there's a lot of things going on, especially with physical development. We're talking about lots of change. The child is still growing, rapidly growing. The motor development in terms of how they move their body is just, it's day and night different. Before, babies can barely move by themselves. They have to be carried. Then they start to crawl, start to walk, start to run. But in early childhood, they're good luck keeping up with a youngster at that age. They're pretty mobile at that stage. They need lots of sleep. There's also, this is this type of, we really start having to think more about nutrition and exercise and things like that. Some, parents enroll their kids into sports and things like that, but that these are very foundational days during early childhood, because the things that the child learns, especially about diet and exercise, could have fundamental lifestyle or life implications. We see this to be true with in the United States, with historically high obesity rates. I think they're mostly on the decline now, but not that long ago, obesity rates, especially in the state of Oklahoma, were pretty high. And I think that part of that is sort of how food and diet and exercise are modeled in the homes. If a child grows up seeing mom and dad eating lots of, fast food and not eating vegetables and not getting exercise and things like that, well, that's what they grow to learn as a normal. That's how people are, versus, if mom and dad are eating healthy and being conscious about things they put in their body and exercising and deliberately exercising in front of their child, I think you send a different message, culturally speaking, about what's important. And so that's really important. That's why this stage is so important, because again, children are like sponges, especially these early years. They're like sponges. This is a stage of like language development. Children are speaking, they're using language, and kind of the later end of this stage, children might be even going to not necessarily school, but maybe preschool. And so this is also where we see, some changes in terms of who is important, who matters in life. It's kind of shifting from parents and caregivers now to peers, teachers, things like that. We're starting to see slight changes there. And we'll talk more about that in chapter 8, especially. But this is a really big change. And also, some of you talked about your post. You really focused in on the different stages, the 4 different stages of Piaget's development. Well, we're moving into 2. We're moving from sensory motor to pre-operational, where, children can use language to think and convey their thinking, but it's still pretty limited. I mean, they struggle with problems like conservation. If you were to show a glass of liquid, a tall glass of liquid and a stocky glass of liquid that both contain the same amount of liquid, if you ask which one has more liquid, the child at this stage is more likely to think it's the taller one, because it's taller. It looks like it has more liquid. They're not really. They're kind of. They're only looking at the immediate property of that water. So, anyways, you're going to read about that. Some physical and cognitive changes. Especially the use of language is so important. I will open up a discussion post. I haven't posted as of this moment, but probably by the time you hear this video, it'll be up. But just remember that you need to get your initial post in by Wednesday, get your peer follow-ups by Friday, and you all have been doing a great job of that. Your peer responses, I love the conversations that have been generated. The questions that you're asking are great. Again, if you're not getting a 15 out of 15, make sure that you're getting your initial post in by Wednesday. If your initial post is later, then you automatically get deducted 2 points. Meaning the highest grade you can get is a 13 out of 15. If you turn in your post early, but you still got, you're missing some points, maybe check your peer responses, because maybe your peer responses aren't quite as in depth as maybe what I'm looking for. You can always ask me. You can always reach out and ask me. I'll be happy to give you some feedback. And then just a heads up, we have an essay coming up, another writing assignment that's coming up on the horizon. We have another exam coming up on the horizon. I'll give you plenty of information about those things. But as far as the app, we have an essay that's called an application essay, and I will post details of that very soon. But I want you to start thinking about an application essay. I'm not asking you to do any kind of research or really even write necessarily a formal essay per se, but I want you to start thinking about some terms that you're seeing in these first 8 chapters or so that we're reading. And I want you to be able to apply those to your own circumstances. And that's kind of what these discussion posts have been centered around, is kind of taking this material outside of the textbook and applying it into a real world setting. So your application paper is going to be a lot like that. But just know in the next week or so that I'm going to be posting information about that. And it's going to be pretty important in terms of, thinking about terms that apply to you. So really think about these next 2 chapters you're reading. Think back on the other chapters you've read before. And again, I'll give you plenty of heads up as we get closer, but just something to think about kind of going forward. So anyways, get exam number 1 done, read chapter 6 and 7, and then make sure you get your discussion posted on time. So other than that, I hope you all have a great week. Look forward to our next discussion post and reading your thoughts and responses. They've been really enjoyable so far, and I'll talk to you all next week. Take care. Bye.